Okay.
I'm sharing now. Okay.
Yes, you are. So good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us in this room. Here we're going to have two sessions. My name is Astrid Wilches. I am going to be the chair. If you have any questions, I will be here to help you. And right now we are going to begin with the presentation by teacher Julio César Torres Rocha. He's from Universidad Libre. His research interests are on intercultural competency and language and teacher identity. So I hope you enjoy his presentation, and teacher Julio César, when you are ready, please begin.
Okay, thank you very much, Astrid. And thank you for the committee of the conference for accepting my presentation. And thank you people for attending the session. Well, to start with, I just want to remind you of the title of my presentation, which is English Language Teacher Educators, Critical Identity Construction and Negotiations. My name is Julio César Torres, and I work at Universidad Libre here in Bogotá, Colombia. To start with, I would like to talk about my position towards professional identity, because I regard professional identity from a cross-structural perspective. Identity as something fluid, vital, multi-sided, pertaining personal as well as social factors, which is not totally determined by dominant structures or systems, but it is an identity that can be critical, agented, and
No, wait, Georgia, wait a minute.
That's, yeah.
Do not worry, please. Do not panic. We still have some time.
The language we use for communications are not homogeneous, monolithic systems. There are elements of a dynamic multi-system that overlaps with other languages, which is obviously the case of English, and English is an international language. Well, I also regard language teacher educators from the researcher's perspectives at the beginning of my study, which is educators that instruct, guide, and support teachers, student teachers. Supervising, they also supervise student teachers, and they produce research. These are like the three main roles of a language teacher educator. Teacher educators are believed to be the core of good teacher education, and their work significantly impacts on the quality of future teachers. That's why I selected this topic, and because also it's a topic that has been overlooked sometimes or under-researched. So about my study, well, first I'm going to talk about the problematic situations I see. ELT communities in local and global settings do not seem to question the practices of teaching ESL, EFL, or English as an international language, following a set of principles, guidelines, and apparent context-free practices. Another problematic situations are we, English language teacher educators, might be functioning as specialists and technicians who are well trained to implement approaches or theories coming from the inner circle countries. Therefore, there is a need for teacher educators in EFL setting to design agendas in teacher education to make the professional development of teachers an effort in which collaboration, reflection, situated experiences, and theorizing opportunities are the guiding principles. And my study addresses particularly this issue. So, my study is located in Colombia, in a post-colonial country, at a private university, and in the language teacher education program. I'd say that the study is about a group of educators who engaged in a collaborative learning activity to explore their identity construction as English language educators. Through a small-scale study and based on our trajectories, experience, our views about the English language, and our political stances towards English as an international language, we managed to interrogate our beliefs, practices, and conceptions, which might be contentious for English language teachers. We engaged in discussions that might have changed perceptions over time regarding language, ELT education, and education in general. The questions that I addressed in my research are: how do English teachers, educators, professional identities evolve in the light of current sociopolitical factors surrounding the teaching of IAL in Colombia? How do teachers, educators think their participation in small group study sessions change their professional identities? And the purpose of the study is to enable teachers, educators to reflect on their professional identity in regard to the teaching of English as an international language in Colombia. We have further purposes in my study, which are to identify English language teacher educators' current conceptions, experiences, and perspectives of factors involved in their role, to raise critical awareness in ELTEST of the social and political factors related to the English as international language by engaging in collaborative learning experience, and also to observe even changes takes place in educators' mindsets on the surrounding political factors of EIL, and therefore in their identity on the basis of a structured collaborative reflection or learning. Moving on to the theoretical framework, I took into account, obviously, English as an international language, linguistic imperialism, native speakerism, teacher-educator professional identity and its political perspective, and Freire's concept of conscientization, which sometimes I will refer to as critical awareness or conscientization. According to Freire, conscientization refers to a process in which men, not as recipients, but as knowing subjects, achieve deepening awareness both of the sociocultural reality that shapes lives, of their capacity to transform that reality. He says that the more the subjects enter into the essence of problematized sub-object, the more they are able to unveil this essence. The more they unveil it, the more their awakening consciousness deepens, thus leading to the conscientization of the situation, and it's the conscientization of the situation of non-native speakers in the ELT community. Moving on to the methodology, my study is framed within an interpretative critical perspective of research. This study aims not only at exploring the construction of teacher-educator identity in a sociocultural context like the Colombian ELT community, but also at creating English language teacher educators' political awareness and therefore a change in their conceptions. The method of data collections, or the methods I used, were interviews, small study group sessions, and written reflections or reflective accounts that language teacher educators wrote. The data analysis that I used was the thematic analysis. Now, moving on to the research design, this is the outline of the research design. First, there was a stage of exploration, then a stage of collaborative learning experience, and then a stage in which we found, or we will find, reflective accounts. The final stage, obviously, which was probably the longest and probably most difficult for me, was the data analysis. Even though I analyzed step by step each of the data sets produced in each of the stages, the last stage was the most significant for me as a researcher. Moving on to the next, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the participants. English language teacher educators in a private university here in Bogotá. 5 non-native speakers, 4 females and 1 male. the qualifications, 1 with a doctoral degree in education and 4 with master's degree in TESOL or in applied linguistics to TEFL. Obviously, they have all worked in teacher education for a long time, but they have obviously previous trajectories in elementary school, high school, most of them. Also people that taught ESP and general English in language centers or institutes. Their teaching experiences ranges from 10 to 30 years. Now, I'm going to walk you through the 3 stages of my research, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the findings of each of the sessions, of each of the steps or stages I went through. So I pay attention first to, in the interviews, to the current issues of English language teacher identity research, ELTE's self-image, feelings towards the world, and ELTE's responsibilities. Also, critical issues such as ELTE's view of language. Remember that we're thinking about moving, or I was thinking that probably we tend to be very monolithic in the perspective of language. And in order to actually think about a more diverse perspective of language, we need to move to a pluralistic perspective of language. And also to take a stance towards English as an international language, English as a lingua franca, or world Englishes. First of all, let's talk about the view of language that I perceived in my participants. One, there was majority an hegemonic view and monolithic view of the language. In this quote, we can see that. Stella says, well, I think that the English that has to be taught in a conversational English that is more on this side, I mean, USA English, American English, and not British English. In this side of the world, we have to pay attention to the USA English because it is the one that we are most influenced by. So I think this is a practical, but also a very monolithic perspective of English, regarding only the standard varieties as the ones you should be teaching. There was only one person that showed some pluralistic view of the language, and he says, this is Jose, the type of English we should read, that teaches one thing that has to do with the worldwide policies that advocate for learning a different register or variety, no matter if that is American or British. It is just learning English for communicating with people. Moving on to the next slide, we think the initial political stance I identify were first a celebratory perspective, an apolitical stance towards English as an international language, and a social critical stance. I want just to focus on this apolitical stand of one of the members because Nadia, she never thought about this political stance as an English language teacher, and also on the social critical stance regarding especially one issue that is the sociocultural perspective of English language teacher education that Sarah says. I try to teach students to be aware of their role as teachers, as future teachers, and try to make them aware of their social responsibility. And Nadia says, because it doesn't only have to do with teaching content, you know, all the structures, but it has to do with being critical, using the language to criticize what is happening all around the world. So it was the initial perspective of the political stance that I found in the interviews. So they all have mixed feelings about their role of as English language teacher educators. They regard themselves as language and methodology experts, but not as research experts. Their view of language is still static and monolithic, and there are various levels of political awareness of the role as English language teacher educators. Well, these feelings started become very, very important from the very beginning. The role of emotions and feelings in the construction of identity of the English language teacher educators in my institution. Moving on to the second stage, a small study group sessions. I have 5 sessions of 2 hours each throughout a semester. This was a small group study, and I took it as a method for studying professional practice that has the following characteristics. It is self-initiated and focused. It is improved aimed. It is interactive. It includes mainly qualitative methods, and it defines validity based on trustworthiness. And it is based on what we call self-study research, which is very traditional, especially in the United States, but obviously it might be also popular all around the world. In this small group study sessions, the 5 sessions of 2 hours, as already told you, we discuss different topics such as critical applied linguistics, English as an international language, linguistic imperialism, native speakerism, teacher education identities, sociocultural terms in language teacher education, and teacher cognition. The first 4 topics were selected by the researcher, me, but the other topics were selected by the participants. At the beginning, it was supposed to be a very participatory type of research, but step by step, I was more in control because of different circumstances. Now, the findings of this self-study group was about the English varieties awareness. So there was awareness of correct Englishes in the world, evolving political stance towards the language, especially towards English as a lingua franca, and world English was very controversial in the group. Developing English language teacher educators' political stance towards English as an international language, and their role in this particular setting in Colombia was also controversial, because obviously some of the participants back up the standard hegemonic languages, the British and American varieties. Also, there was, or I found, resistance to and compliance or compliance with the foreign language policies in the country as well. Some obviously agree with the policies established by the Ministry of Education, but others are much more critical and resistant to the imposition of this top-down strategy that is administrative, coming from the government. And I found so varied teacher educators' beliefs about what language teacher education implies. Other findings about the self-study group is that they started contemplating new research interest on sociocultural aspects in the ELT Colombian setting. I found also the need to explore sociocultural and critical issues like racism, equality, and gender. Also, social justice was one topic. Resistance to the change of ideology of English, because obviously it's related to success, employability, and native speakerism, which is highly regarded here in this context. Confrontation with their own identities and reaffirmation was also very related to what I said before, feelings and emotions. That is actually a very important issue when we think about construction or negotiation of identities. Moving on to the last bit of these findings, I found also teaching seems to be the priority, not like in other contexts that teaching, supervising, and researching is all together. In my institution, teaching was like the priority. Also, I found expanded identities in the sense that they start contemplating as something really important, the supervision and the researching, but some of them don't have specific research responsibilities in the institution. And something that becomes very, very relevant was the role model and the social activist perspective now as something really, really important in the Colombian context. Now, English language teacher educators changed their view of language from a monolithic perspective to a more pluralistic view of the language, step by step throughout the sessions. And English language teacher educators perceived changed in their political stances from being anapolitical, for example, to recognizing the various levels of political responsibility in their context. LTEST renew interest in contextual sociocultural issues, and LTEST want to explore new research interests, like research in identity for LGBT lesbian, gay, transgender, etc. identities as well. They wanted to research about that. They also want to talk and research about impaired students that we have at the university, blind students and deaf students, and interest also on feminism. One of the participants mentioned that. Well, Nadia especially was the person that that changed the most throughout the whole process. At the end, in final reflection, I'm going to refer to, well, actually we already referred to before, sorry. She said, despite the fact that I have a master's in applied linguistics, and this fact has made me believe that my main concern as a language teacher is just to solve problems related to learning of a language. After reading this text and sharing with my colleagues, I've been considering about my role as language teacher, and the challenges that I should face. I mean, I have to keep in mind social and political issues which are clearly connected to the teaching and learning of a language. So here I selected this particular quote because I think it reflects the changes that I see at the end of the research in most of the participants. She refers to the identity as something that is changing, fluid, but also conflicting, because this particular participants, Nadia, at the end said that she thought that she probably never wanted to be an English teacher, but probably she wanted to be a literature teacher or something else. So it was like a self-confrontation at the end that is related to one of the findings that I found very, very important and relevant, key findings at the end of my research. Well, now moving on to the emerging findings.
Teacher Julio Cesar, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The thing is that I would like to remind you maybe just one more minute because we need to leave some space for questions. So just maybe if you can wrap up in 1 minute, it would be wonderful. Thank you, teacher.
Sure. So very quickly, I'm going to tell you about the bigger things or key findings. English language teacher educators changed their political stance towards teaching English as an international language. LTEST critical identity reconstruction, and reconstruction involves the fact that we construct our self-identity and negotiate our identity through discourse. The importance of emotions in the construction of identities. And also, I found that there is a need for alternative research in ELT, not just to focus on particular on the very common topics that we usually deal with at universities, which is the 4 skills, the development of good pronunciation, the development of language as such, but other topics such as inclusion, diversity, social inclusion, etc., etc. And also, I found that in the final reflections of the participants, that the empowering effect of collaborative learning was essential for my research, and it's probably the best way, in my perspective, to start developing teacher development in different institutions at different levels, high school, university, etc. Well, my evolving identity, obviously as a participant, I also changed my perspective. I'm thinking more about the colonial perspective at the end of my research. I opened my mind to new ways of doing research because I also suffer the emotions of being a researcher and having to make decisions or take decisions about what to choose, what not to choose, difficulties that I face in the research. And that's why I also have to embrace leadership as a researcher. But I also can say that I reaffirmed my social and political role as an English language teacher educator in my country. So that's all for the time being. I wonder if you have any questions about my research. I can share my camera. I'm sorry, I was not able to open my camera so you can see me. Sorry about that.
No.
Any questions are welcome.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Teacher Julio Cesar. We have 2 minutes in case somebody has any questions for Teacher Julio Cesar. You can write it in the chat. Or if you prefer, you can ask very fast using the microphone as well. It will be only 2 minutes because we need to start at 9:50 with the next presentation. So.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So as an educator, language educator myself, I'm struggling with like my confidence in teaching language because I will never be like speak as fluently as a native speaker. I'm wondering, in your research, have you found something relevant to this, like confidence of the researcher, of the teachers?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question. It was difficult for me to hear.
How the
can you rephrase the question? Is related to feelings?
Yeah, I mean, how the teachers construct their identity as like a confident language learner and a teacher.
Well, I would say that my participants, they were all confident. They are very, very experienced teachers. And if you think about confident as a researcher, I can talk about me as a researcher. No, my own evolving identity grew very much because I now recognize myself more as an academic. Yes, as an academic in the role of English language teacher educator. And I would say that, yes, I as I said at the end, I embraced the fact that research needs leadership, and I needed to assume the role of a leader, in spite of the fact that at the beginning I wanted the research to be a participatory research. I ended up doing most of the job, no? Even though I used let's say, members checked at the beginning. Obviously, my research was very demanding for participants because I demanded them time in order to read, time in order to reflect with me during 10 hours of their time. They are very, very busy people. So I also learned that there are limits to the research, and the researcher needs to be aware that even though the research for you is the most important thing as a researcher, for the participants is just one space in which they can reflect, talk, criticize, but I need to think about the participants' time and the effort they are making in order to participate in my research. So I think that was an important reflection for me as a researcher and as an academic
Okay.
in my research.
Okay, thank you very much, Teacher Julio Cesar. Thank you for your question. There is another question by Michael, but Teacher Julio Cesar, could you please first stop sharing your screen, and second, if you don't mind, could you please answer to Teacher Michael the question that is there? Maybe you can answer to him in the chat, because right now we need to continue with the next presentation.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Teacher Julio Cesar. It was very interesting.
What if okay, thank you very much, Astrid, and thank you all for attending my presentation.
All right. Thank you, teacher. So if you could stop sharing your screen so that the next two teachers could start sharing their presentation. Thank you very much. So right now we're going to continue, and also please mute your microphone. Thank you, teacher. So right now we're going to continue with the next presentation that is by Marta Fondo. She's from the Universidad Oberta de Catalunya. Her research interests are on affective dimension of language learning, technology, and multiculturalism. Teacher Julio Cesar, could you please mute your microphone? Thank you very much. And also by Martin Steffel, who is from University of Chemistry and Technology of Prague. His research interests are on ELT, philosophy of business, ethics, and philosophy of technology, researches into critical thinking and its application in ELT. They're going to start their presentation right now. So please, Teacher Julio Cesar, could you please mute your microphone and stop sharing? Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
Okay. I will share my screen and then I start going through the presentation. Is that fine?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Just to start. Okay. Let's see. Let's see if I move forward, if you can see. Can you see the slides changing?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So it's working. Great. So thank you everyone for being here. So as you see, we are going to present today something regarding virtual exchanges and social presence in digital learning. Because we have seen that it brings some social dimension to distance learning. In my case, Universidad Oberta de Catalunya, it's a fully online university here in Spain, in Barcelona. And so students lack sometimes this social part involved in learning. In Martin's case, Martin, you can talk a little about your context, if you wish.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us. Hello, I'm Martin. So in my context, I'm from the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague, in Czech Republic. And what we have here are students who study business English at the business school of a technological university. So for them, especially the experience of almost a 2-year lockdown, which we are experiencing almost again, has been very taxing in terms of social contact. And this is something we would like to talk about. So thank you for having us. Marta, over to you.
Okay, so I cannot now. Well, maybe not all of you know about virtual exchanges. So it is based on technology that makes us be in contact. It can be either written or or video or audio. The general, can you hear a noise all the time?
Yes, please, Teacher Julio Cesar. We are asking you. I have been asking you many times, Teacher Julio Cesar. Can you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
That was it.
Yeah, because I'm using, okay, sorry, I'm using my earplugs and it's like, breaking my head all the
I
time.
know. It's done.
Okay,
Thank you
okay.
very much. Go ahead. Continue, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting. Okay, so the recipe for a virtual exchange is to have a good content, okay, to have meaningful and fun communicative tasks, to have a clear aim, which has to be aligned with the curricula. We will talk about all this, okay. 2 or more students from different cultures or languages. So what we do is to put students from different cultural realities or language realities to interact, to practice so many different things, not only languages. We will talk about this. And then we need technology, of course, to make them interact. So as I was saying, it can be an interaction synchronous, asynchronous, it can be written, it can be talking, video, many different options. The communication can be one-on-one, okay, can be only 2 people interacting, can be one-to-many, so 1 person with a group, can be groups with groups, okay. So it's very, very flexible and there are many options. In terms of language, they can be bilingual, so normally there are 2 native speakers of each other's language, they are learning each other's language. So English or Spanish, for instance, so I'm a Spanish speaker, you are English speaker, and we practice each other languages and we help each other. Can be monolingual, so only in 1 language, one speaks in their native language and the other one speaks the foreign language, or lingua franca, normally in English or French, the most spoken languages in the world. Then the aims can be as many as you can imagine, but normally they are focusing on language practice, intercultural practice, but it can also be practice for chemistry and many others. Right now are loads of projects going on around the globe with the students from so many places working about so many different topics. So it's not only for language practice, although it started there in this field. And then, as I said, it can be synchronous, so they speak at the same time or write at the same time, or asynchronous, so they can send messages to each other, but they do not interact at the same time. Okay, any questions so far? I hope I'm explaining myself properly. Martin, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. Perhaps I just wanted to share a few thoughts on, because you spoke a lot about students and about the process itself. I just wanted to make a short comment about the fact that in my experience, what is important is the role of the teacher, who becomes more of a host rather than the sage. So we have a new metaphor of a teacher as a host. You're hosting the process, you're inviting students to join. When I say inviting, I wanted to also mention that this activity should be based on the student's interest. So it should be ideally voluntary, and it should also, I would say, be possible for the teacher to integrate the outputs as part of the assessment of the class, because that's part of the motivation for the students, yeah, as well. And also I wanted to say that this is a nice way to individualize student, I would say, experience from the class. And this is very important, especially in heterogeneous classes with students who lack motivation or are shy to speak. And that's something we are going to mention. So I just wanted to bring this up briefly.
Indeed, yeah, we will read some of the students' comments and we will see some comments related to exactly this topic Martin is now talking about. I would say it's very important if you just want to try. By the way, you can contact us anytime if you want to get involved in any of this type of projects, if you have any question. But from my point of view, it's always integrated in the curricula. This is very important because then it's meaningful. But also in our case, it needs to be graded. You have to take into account that in our case, in Universitat Oberta de Catalunya, we are an online university. So this project, it's part of the subject in this case. And if it's not graded and it's voluntary, many students won't get involved because our students are mainly professionals taking a second degree, or maybe someone that wants an improvement in their professional career, things like that. So they're busy people, so they won't do anything like just voluntarily, okay? So there are different realities in this case. And I completely agree. You are the host, you are the facilitator. You have to be there. Like I always say, I'm the mommy, and like a little mom, helping them and giving them support. Okay, so in terms of the positive or the advantages, the positive things or advantages of virtual exchanges, we have many, okay? So it is true that they allow intercultural experiences for students just being at home. They do not need to travel because they are in contact with different cultures thanks to the internet. And then it promotes different skills developments, but this depends on the way you design tasks and the way you design the projects, because the skills are not going to be developed by themselves. So you should be careful with this, okay? Well, in our case, I was, as every spring semester, going to do my project, this virtual exchange with the students at work, and Martin was going to get involved with his students, and suddenly COVID, started. So we had a completely different reality, and Martin suddenly had to move also to online teaching. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
So we were both online in this time, and this is what we want to share today. So virtual exchanges in distance learning can be an advantage, but in this case was exactly a different scenario. So thankfully we had ICT, so information and communication technologies, so the internet, we had video conferences, we had email, we have many means of communication online, and this allowed us to provide the students with these projects, and we suddenly realized with some social interaction, the social dimension of learning, they were lacking because of the context. Well, so in terms of distance learning, we have advantages. Obviously, in COVID times, having this option was key, because many students, if not, did not have any opportunity to keep learning and studying. They could manage their time independently. They have access to education thanks to this technology, and there is seamless learning, so you can study from everywhere. If you're in lockdown, this everywhere, it's the kitchen, the living room, okay? But right now, maybe it can be a coffee shop or the university, your home, and so on. But there are also some barriers, some disadvantages, as we know, because not everybody has access to technology nor good internet connection. The seamless learning could be also a problem because we get very unfocused. We don't know where we left things and so on. And maybe the social aspects of learning, what Vygotsky has defended as the expert novice roles when we are learning, are not that easy to maintain. So Martin, I don't know if you want to add something here.
I just wanted to speak briefly about the role of technology, because I think this is very important. You've mentioned the key aspect, which is the, let's say, democratizing, I'd say, dimension of using technology in the classes, which of course goes hand in hand with the availability of the ICT technologies, but also we shouldn't forget that what Richard Kern was and has been talking about a lot, that is the mediality of ICT technologies and their way, and the way they shape teacher-learner interaction, their pull towards transmissive and passive modes of student-teacher interaction. And I'm saying this because I think this is something we have been able to bypass through our project, paradoxically, which we have been able to maintain at the time when the students were locked up and they were spending their teaching or learning time online. And in the middle of that, we were able to offer a project which was online and which was at the same time meaningful. And I think we'll see this through the answers that we prepared for you, that we managed to avoid these traps, because Richard Kern speaks famously about the pharmacon of technology and speaks about the double-edged blade of technology. So I think we've avoided that. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, well, in this case, when these type of projects are mediated by video conference, and this is the closest experience you can give to students to face-to-face communication. We have oral communication, but we also have all the images supporting this communication, which is vital for us when students are not native speakers of the language. They need some support sometimes, and image in this case, it's key. In also make them feel closer to each other, okay? Well, these projects, as we said, give the social aspects, and it's not Martin and myself saying this, okay? Other researchers support this. And this 21st century skills development, which the students themselves reported in their comments and the questionnaire we sent at the end of the project. Well, so in this case, this project had been on since 2018. In this case, was the third time we were running this project, and Martin got involved with his students. And it was a very different profile. My students are older, his students are younger. My university is online, his university was face-to-face and moved online. So there were many differences, even the academic context. Some of them had more experience, some of them were studying business, the other ones. So it was like many differences. So we were like curious, okay, first of all, what's the social aspects? Now we are in lockdown, no? We were reflecting on this. So are they valued by the students? Are they aware of these social aspects of virtual exchanges? And then we were also, is this something we can find in students? Because we sent this questionnaire, but then in their comments, they had an open question, we will see this. And we were like wondering if they make this reflection something visible in their comments during the project and at the end of the project. And then also comparing, has COVID-19 had any impact in the way they perceive virtual exchanges? Is there any difference between 2018, the first time we ran the project, and 2020? So these are the three research questions that went through this study. We had two types of data, the quantitative that we gather at the end of the project in 2018, and then at the end of the project in 2020 in plain lockdown. Then qualitative data that was gathered in the session reports. Every time they finished a session, a video conference, they sent a report, a summary of the session they had, the video conference. And then at the very end of this questionnaire we sent to evaluate the project, they had an open question to reflect about the project. So this is the qualitative data we are using in this sense. Well, the sample, Martin, anytime you want to talk, you interrupt me, okay? If not, I go on.
That's okay, you go on, because we are almost running out of time, as I've noticed
I
in the
know.
chat, so it's over to you.
Perfect. So there are, in our case, sorry, there is a mistake here. This is monolingual, sorry. It has, so the type of project is monolingual. It's English as a lingua franca. There is a mistake here. I'm so sorry, apologize, okay? Between our students, so native speakers of Spanish, native speakers of Czech, so they were interacting in English, is monolingual and one-on-one. And the students in Prague, they were studying business English. My students were not studying English, were enrolled in a subject which is international management, but the subject is taught in English, okay? And this is the data we use for the qualitative data and part of the quantitative one, but then we used also the data gathered in 2018, only the quantitative, and the same students at work, the other students interacting with other universities in 2020, okay, which were bilingual, not monolingual, English and Spanish. Well, the project were 8 weeks long. They had 4 sessions with 4 different tasks. So they had role play, they had free talk, like debates, different types of tasks with content to practice international management and business English. And it was mediated by video conference. So this is the interesting thing. We can see here the question that how important is to have these elements in a virtual exchange like this one, a cooperative partner, a partner with good language skills and having no technical problems. And what they value the most is to having a cooperative partner. They don't care that much about language skills nor technical problems, although they suffer very often this. And the interesting thing is that there are not so many differences between, sorry, the green one is WOC 2018. There is a mistake here. Now I'm seeing everything in big, I realize. Okay, then here is the same. We cannot find many differences between the 3 groups and different years. So when we asked about, well, how important was and useful for your personal life, the project was useful for academic life, and if you enjoy someone knowing someone from a different culture, they more or less value the three groups we have here. So students from Prague, students at work in 2020, and students at work at 2018. We cannot see many differences, and what they value the most is knowing someone from a different culture, the social aspect of the interaction, not if it was useful for them. Again, what they enjoy the most, we are asking interacting with your partner, practicing the foreign language with your partner, and getting to know your partner. They are more or less the same because everything involves interaction and the social aspects of these virtual exchanges. And again, we see that 2018, it's a little bit lower, but it's not significant at all. And all the 3 groups are more or less evaluating equally the 3 different items. And they were very different situations, very different contexts, and very different profiles. And they were evaluating the project in this terms, social aspects, more or less the same. So this was, for us, was very surprising, because it seems that having good language skills is not that important, that all the social aspects of interacting with your partner, having a good partner, and so on. And this was reflected then in the qualitative results. In these comments we are sharing with you today, we don't have time to read all this, but in this time, these were the comments we've had in the communications when they were sending the reports. And for instance, this is our last meeting and this person is very sad, walk number 1. Well, this CTU1, it's a coach, is a nice person, everything went fine, and so on. I love talking. And here we have some reflections about COVID. I've enjoyed it a lot during all this time, even though it was a hard time to be concentrated in some aspects regarding COVID-19. And I love this one, this last one. Well, after hours of conversation, blah, 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 we finished with the beginning of a friendship and with the promise that I will make my own Corona mask, was the face mask, with the same pattern as yours. So they were integrating these COVID-19 things in their relationship that is starting as a kind of friendship thanks to the virtual exchange. In terms of technology, it's interesting because we found a difference here. They could choose the communication tool they wanted, and this reduced a lot the anxiety regarding technology. We did not use this data because we don't have time for everything. But they say we use this one because we know how it works. So we decided to go for the one we wanted. The negative side is that they had technological issues, and they also had internet connection problems very often, and they reflect on this. So technology for them sometimes was challenging, but the anxiety in these terms was reduced because they could even use WhatsApp, whatever they wanted for the communication. And then breaking barriers, what we were talking about. There are, even despite the differences between the profiles, students enjoyed. And we can see here, for instance, he is really nice man in CTU too, even he is 20 years older than me. It was really good experience. But at the very end, it was so funny. Because CTU 3 is saying, oh, he was surprised because his partner was pregnant, and I'm 22. I expected to make calls with someone the same age, but in the end, I prefer to be like this. And this is because WOCA students worked a little as mentors, so the experts, with the novice, and everything found a role that was good for them. And all the reports we have about their relationships with them was so nice and so interesting. Okay, regarding this open question in the evaluation questionnaire, almost everywhere we found some comments regarding the partner. So it's important to have a comparative partner, a partner who enjoys communication. It's important not to be shy. This is what Martin was referring to, not to be shy talking in front of your partner. Okay, so shyness has to be apart from this. Well, again, we have know each other, social aspects, then technical aspects, so technical things must work. Collaborators cannot, if collaborators cannot be friends, they will not enjoy in the same way and they will not learn. Here, these students relating social aspects and emotional aspects of learning to the project. So it's so interesting. And well, I really like this last one because it didn't really matter if at some point he couldn't find the right words, or if he didn't really have the knowledge of the subject enough. It was very enjoyable. So this is clear. They were really enjoying the social aspects of this project. And well, we have seen that all the measures regarding social aspects were above 4, so a very high levels of positive evaluation about social aspects. Then the second question, if they are present in the comments, well, we analyzed 44 session reports from these 11 pairs and 22 open questions in this evaluation questionnaire. Among all these, 64 always had a reference to the partner or some social aspects. So the 97% of the cases, so a lot. And lastly, COVID-19 had an impact. No, there were no significant differences between 2018 and 2020. So this more or less explains that context, profiles, and many other aspects of these virtual exchanges do not affect the way students perceive the virtual exchange, because it seems that this social aspect of the projects, of these interactions, learning together and so on, it's like sweeps away, you know, all the negative aspects of being different, or negative aspects, what we think could be negative. And they valued exactly the same, more or less, taking part in this project, no matter if they were in lockdown or having their regular lessons. So, well, that's it. Do you have any questions? Martin, do you want to add anything?
I would say that you've covered all the most important points, so maybe I'm just going to allow more space for eventual questions. So thank you very much.
I try my best to go fast, I'm sorry.
Yes, I know time is so short and the topic was so very interesting, really, really cool to see the perception of the students, of the participants. It was really nice. And yes, it was really interesting. So if anybody has any questions, I think we only have a couple of minutes for that probably, but we would like to offer the space in case somebody has any questions for
And
the
of
presenters.
course, they can email us anytime. We love to collaborate and to explain whatever. Virtual exchanges about collaboration between teachers first and then students. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to include here the emails from the teachers in the chat in case somebody wants to contact you. Okay.
Thank you.
But anyway, let's say that we have just 1 minute, maybe, if anybody wants to share or say, like, any question, maybe. Please, teachers, if you can see the comment here by Sibyl, maybe.
Mm-hmm. The students had quite a high level of English. Okay. Thank you, Manuela, and thank you, Sibyl. Well, in my case, most of them had an intermediate and advanced level. Martin, your students had a lower level.
Yes, I would say that my students, those who participated, were at their best moments, they were B1 minus, perhaps, I would say. So they were able to communicate, but for me, it was also the question of not being used to communicating, because for most of these students, it was the first time they have had a chance to communicate with someone who's not a teacher or who is not a fellow student sitting next to them in a class, helping them to fill out a textbook exercise or assignment. So it was a question of just overcoming the shyness, and that's it. So it was, B1s, weak B1s.
Yeah, since they A2 level, since they can communicate a little, they can go for a language exchange. It's better if it's bilingual. So if the partner knows the language as well, so it helps. So English and Spanish, for instance, A2 level, they are able to communicate because they know a little about each other languages. If not, it's challenging, but images are awesome in this case. They share images about what they want to talk. They check words on the internet. We have the recordings as well. It's so interesting seeing how they break these cultural and communication breakdowns. So now with technology, everything is possible.
That's true. That's right.
We are here indeed today.
So, well, I found it really, really interesting, and I'm sure that we all have many questions about it, but unfortunately we have run out of time. And in this moment, I would like to ask everybody if you could please turn on your camera. We would like to take a screenshot just to remember this moment and this great presentation. So yeah, you look great. Yeah, everybody looks fine. So please, if you could, if you want to turn on the camera, that would be fantastic. And I will take a screenshot for all the participants of this great presentation. Thank you very much to the 3 teachers that were sharing their presentation here. It was really interesting, and we would like to know more about it. In a moment, I will also share the email from teacher Julio Cesar also, just in case somebody wants to contact them. I'm just waiting for more people, maybe if they want to turn on their cameras. If not, then well, I will just take a screenshot with the people that are already here, and that will be it, right? I guess that's it. Yes, I think that's it. So smile, cheese. That's it. That was it. So thank you very much. Let me just share here the email from teacher Julio Cesar, and remember that you can go back to the main room right now. And thanks everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you for sharing. Bye.
Yes.